how we can use typography to enhance data visualization. So a little bit about me. I work as a UX designer and user consultant. We're about 100-person software company in the centre of Oxford, and we work on projects ranging from sort of science, engineering, social care, and often these projects involve visualising complex and large data sets, particularly for like the science and engineering domain. In the past, I've worked on projects involving complex data visualisation, including a project with the University of Reading Met Office on the communication of uncertainty and probabilistic weather forecast information to the public. And prior to joining Oxford Computer Consultants, I studied for MA in Information Design at the University of Reading. And for those of you who don't know Reading, aside from being very good for meteorology, it's also one of the foremost places to study typeface design and typography. And I'm particularly interested in this interplay between typography, user experience, information design, and this includes things like data visualization and how we can use that to effectively communicate information to readers. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term of typography, I think perhaps the most simple definition that I could find for the word typography is this idea of writing with prefabricated letters, that is, the letters that we see in typefaces, to produce written words. And I think actually the first line on Wikipedia has quite a good definition of what typography is, and it's the art and technique of arranging type to make the written language legible, readable, and appealing when displayed. And I think those three words, legible, readable, and appealing, are really the key to good typography. And this is why I think it's one of the principal methods of which authors, no matter what discipline you work in, whether you're a novelist or a data visualizer, can use to communicate information to readers. So, as I said, this talk will talk about typography and data visualization. I'll look at some examples of how typography has been used in data visualization throughout the history of data visualization as a discipline, and then look at a few things to look out for, in particular in typefaces that you might want to choose for data visualization. So, as I said, when you think about typography, you might think about things like this, the Gutenberg Bible, or perhaps this, William Cason's 1734 specimen sheet for one of his typefaces. But typography is all around us, it's everywhere. It's from the shop signs that we see as we're walking down the street, to the wayfinding systems in our streets, to the interfaces in science fiction television that we watch. And of course, nearly all data visualization that we produce, from Playfair's pioneering trade balance time series chart published in his commercial and political atlas in 1786, through to the interactive thematic maps that we see in online journalism, such as this one from the New York Times mapping poverty in America, they all feature typography. And even within quite a simple piece of data visualization, there's often many typographic elements to consider, things like axes, titles, categories, data labels, grid lines, legends, citations, annotations, just to name but a few. And what typography, while they play a sort of secondary role in visualization design, good typography provides clarity, and it really helps designers to communicate their information effectively. And by integrating text and graphics, and by making the text more graphical through typographic variation, which I'm going to go on and talk about, we can really enhance the meaningfulness of the data that we're trying to communicate. And this is supported by lots of the research in cognitive load theory, notably the stuff by Chandler and Sweller, then they demonstrated that the interwoven presentation of text and graphics can help a reader comprehend information much more easily. And I know that Matt spoke earlier about sparklines, and I think these are a great example of integrating text and graphical elements to improve meaningfulness and aid in communication. But of course, things don't always work out so elegantly, and sometimes things go wrong. And this is a graph which is live on Wikipedia at the moment, on this page about the space race. And I think, while jokes aside, this graph is supposed to show you the US passing the Soviets in 1965, but I'm not exactly sure where that is on that graph, so if anyone can find it, please come and let me know. Yeah, jokes aside, this example I think really highlights why a good handle on typography is really important for clarity and readability and achieving this idea of graphical excellence, which I guess most notably Tufty talks about. And this is because I think even the best, most interesting data can be misread if it's presented poorly. And it's easy for our poor typographic decisions to fall into a category that hinders the communication rather than aids understanding. They can become chart junk, the term, again coined by Tufty, refers to this useless, non-informative information that's obscuring the quantitative information that we're trying to display. But typography is also really important because without typography, the graph can become completely unuseful. So for example, in this instance, if I remove all of the typography from that display, this graph becomes completely meaningless. And to reinforce that, Amanda Cox, the New York Times graphics editor, considers the annotation layer of the graphics the most important thing that they do. Through careful use of labels, introductions, exploratory text, and captions, the New York Times designers take responsibility for assisting the readers in understanding the context of the graphic and interpreting its key messages. So I think this suggests that typography really is too important to your user's experience of your data visualizations to ignore. This is because text often adds that all-important clarity that helps the author communicate this really important information to the reader that they need to be able to accurately understand data visualization. So how can we use typography to enhance data visualization? Well, I think we've already talked a bit about labeling and how consistent labeling reduces this idea of misinterpretation. And what we can do is use typography as part of, within this labeling, to encode information and encode subtle bits of information to the reader. And the famous Swiss typographer, Emil Ruder, said in 1969 that it's the typographer's task to divide up and organise and interpret this massive printed matter in such a way that the reader will have a good chance of finding what is interesting to him. And often that's the task that we're trying to do when we're trying to produce a piece of data visualization or an information graphic. A good typographer is considering the reader and aiding in their comprehension, much like a good data visualizer. And the way that typographers do this is through using typographic variations to differentiate and group particular types of information, create information hierarchies and reading paths to emphasize and highlight information in a range of locations. And we can use these elements to enhance the textual parts of our data visualization. So what are those techniques that we can use? So I think the first of these is differentiating and grouping. And at this point, we've got to ask ourselves, what are the different types of information that I'm trying to display? And we can use what typographers refer as micro-typographic variables, and this is things like italics and small caps and font styles, to group information together. A good example of this is in John Snow's map in 1854 for the cholera outbreak in Soho. Now, John Snow at the time had lots of constraints. He couldn't really use colour. Colour wasn't something that was particularly available in terms of printing in 1854. So he had to think of other ways in which he could highlight the pumps. So he just uses a slightly heavier weighted typeface to label these pumps to differentiate them from the other texture elements on that map. Now, I think this is a very simple example, and I've sort of previewed another classic example of data visualization, the figurative map by Charles Joseph Menard that shows Napoleon's troops across the Russian Empire of Alexander I. And he uses these amazingly simple modern graphical codes to show the progress with the, you can't really see it very well, but this sort of line here showing the reduction in the number of troops as they walked across Russia facing the cold winter. And within this graph, there's lots of textual elements. We've got place names, we've got the names of rivers, we've got the numbers of people. In fact, there's lots of different things that he's grouped together and used different typographic variation to group those pieces of information together, from italic typefaces here, slightly smaller font here, upper caps, italics here. And he's used this to identify the different textual elements and group them together. The other thing we have to consider is hierarchy. This is one of the most important things, piece of information to the reader. Most of us will probably be familiar with the idea of establishing a hierarchy when we're creating things like documents. We'll put a header in a larger font, we'll put our main text in a lower font. And it's important that this visual hierarchy matches the importance of each piece of information to the user. And it needs to be delivered so that the user can read the information that's being presented to them in a logical sequence and access the different layers of information. So in this data visualization, which is it's called Your Micro by Jonathan Coram from the New York Times. This is an annotated chart which shows the myriad of microbes that are hitching a ride inside our bodies. And if we zoom in on this, you can see that there's lots of textual elements being used to annotate the different parts of the data visualization. So we've got headings, we've got annotated text, we've got labels, we've got little informative pieces of information, such as this bit up here, which just tells the user that there's a small amount. This corresponds to a small amount of data. And by using a variety of typographic techniques, including uppercase text, bold, italics, he's able to guide the reader into the most important piece of information and layer back those additional pieces of information. So you'll notice that text such as a small amount here is very, very small in comparison to family tree, and the labelling around here of different types of microbes. And this multi-layering technique really allows users to access the information that's important to them at the time when they're reading the graphic. And sometimes only text is really required to visualize something. In this example from the New York Times, the designers just used type size to communicate the relative amount of money per person that's spent on various things. Now obviously in comparison to some of the data visualization we've seen, this is a relatively simple data visualization, but just by using type size here, they're able to create this sort of cross between text and visualization, which highlights the relative difference between these figures. Now, I wouldn't recommend that this is necessarily the most, it necessarily conveys the figures in as clear as possible in terms of it's very difficult for a user to compare the relative size of text. But it does add a level of sort of visualization to this piece on the federal budget, and really I think makes perhaps for a more engaging article than say presenting this as a series of bar charts. So the typographic variables that we may want to consider, and this is not an exhaustive list of things that we may want to use. We can adjust the typeface, so we may want to use a mixture of sans serif and serif typefaces. We can use things like margin, spacing, and indentation. We can vary the size of the typeface. Now, obviously in lots of data visualization, size, the ability to vary the size of the typeface is very, very difficult because you're trying to present a lot of information in a condensed format. But even a subtle change of, say, 2 point sizes can make a real difference between which bit of text the user's naturally drawn to first. We can use things like bold and regular, and I'll go on in the next section of this about the sort of typefaces you might want to choose and how you can choose a typeface which allows you to have more control over the weight. Things like italics and oblique. We can also use case, so we can use lowercase, uppercase, perhaps small caps. We have to think about the reading consideration if we're going to use uppercase, being that it's harder to read than lowercase. And we can also adjust the letter spacing. So if we tracked some text out that has made the space between each letter much bigger than other pieces of text on the page, that gives that piece of text a slightly different feeling and makes it stand out from the other piece of text. So that, combined with, say, uppercase letters, gives a real differentiation. And we can also use things like colour and opacity and other sort of more conventional graphic techniques to adjust the importance of text on the page. Now, for all of these typographic variables to work, we need to choose a typeface that really makes it work. And I guess the basic thing is the typeface that's chosen should be legible and readable. That is, it should be able to be read without effort. But there's several other factors that we may want to consider when we're choosing a typeface for data visualization. Now, legibility is a matter of typeface choice. It's sometimes just a matter of type size, whether you've got the text set too large or too small, but more often than not, it is actually the choice of the typeface that has the biggest impact on legibility, and therefore choosing a good typeface should be a principal concern for data visualizers. And that's because if we choose a poor typeface, this can undermine all of our earlier efforts to divide up the information through careful typographic choices, and at worst it could have a significant impact on the legibility of our diagram. So a clean, modern sans serif is probably considered the most suitable type for data visualization. The simple character forms help to aid clarity and legibility at small sizes. However, serif typefaces can be used effectively, and there's little scientific research that rigorously shows that sans serif or a serif is more legible. So, for example, in this diagram of, by The Guardian of the world carbon dioxide emissions per country, you can see that they've actually used a slab serif font, that is, they've got little serifs on the edge of the typeface, in order to create this visualization, and just using that slab serif for everything as part of their, which is part of their corporate typeface. But what I would say on the choice of typefaces is that in general, it's typefaces that stick true to the basic letter forms that are more legible than typefaces that are, say, particularly condensed or particularly expanded, so those letters that are very, very thin or very, very fat, or typefaces that have been over-embellished, so these are things like script typefaces that you may see on a sort of greetings card, or typefaces that have been attempted to be sort of abstracted away to very, very simple forms that don't really match the forms that we're used to. So yeah, typefaces could be overly expressive or go the other way and try and be sort of so neutral that they become simply illegible. Another consideration we must make when we're choosing a typeface is the range of weights and styles that are available. And the greater number of weight and styles that are available, the greater, this gives us greater control of the typographic variation that we can use to communicate with the reader. So in this instance, Univer by Adrian Frutiger, which is particularly noticeable for the availability and corresponding sets of comprehensive but consistent range of weights and styles. So we've got extended bold fonts in this corner, and we've got ultra thin, ultra condensed thin fonts, and everything in between. Not all typefaces are as complete as this, but there's certainly lots of good typefaces out there which have, for example, medium, semi-bold, bold, which just gives you that extra control and subtlety. There's also things to look for within the actual characters of the typeface. So large open characters aid clarity and readability, and they prevent the text from filling in, particularly at small sizes. So in this example from FS Milbank, which was a typeface designed for wayfinding, you can see that there's large open counters in the B, E, G, and O. And these open counters basically prevent the typeface from filling in. We also need to think about character differentiation. So you've probably experienced this before, at least in certain things where it's difficult to distinguish between an uppercase I and a lowercase l in some typefaces. So things like adding serifs to the lowercase I to enhance its character recognition. And we want to really look for typefaces which have got this optimal character recognition. So things like little spurs on the U, making sure that the uppercase I and the uppercase I and the lowercase l don't look the same. Little things on the end differentiated from an M. So sort of a classic word that you can use to test a good typeface is millimeters. It's a very, very good test of the typeface. Other things to look for are open terminals. So things where it doesn't close up, and we've got and these add clarity and strokes that enhance the readability. And we also need to make sure that the numerals are recognisable. So this is particularly important in data visualisation. So it's preferable that things like the 6 and the 9 have these open terminals, and that things like the B character of the typeface and the 8 don't look too similar. You can also do, some typefaces also have things like a dot added to the O in order to differentiate from the 0 to differentiate it from the O. And this, again, aids legibility, but obviously adding a dot to the centre of the 0 reduces the openness of its counter. It's also important to look out for typefaces which are well spaced. So a well-crafted typeface will take care of the positive and negative space in and around the letter forms. And this makes it look like it's evenly balanced. So when we look at that word adhesion, it looks like the typefaces, the letters are evenly spaced between them. But if we actually draw in some lines, we see that there's lots of variation in the spacing, and the typeface designer has gone through and will have put variation between the spacing of every single character in the typeface and created essentially, as we talked about briefly earlier, the idea that typefaces are software, and they would have created these pairs of characters in order to give this feeling of well-spaced and evenly spaced typeface. And a good typeface will have this rhythm to it that we perhaps don't necessarily notice, but you will notice a sort of even appearance. And lastly, I would say another thing to look for is a large X height. So this is, the X height is the height of the lowercase letters in comparison to the height of the uppercase letters. So we call it's the height of the lowercase x, basically, it's what's called the X height. So we see with this typeface, the lowercase letters are very, very, very close to the height of the uppercase letters. And by having a large X height, this helps improve readability and legibility, particularly at small sizes, which is very important for data visualization. Another thing that's very, very legible in FS Milbank is this, the extension of the ascenders on the H and the dot on the I actually go above the cap height. And this again helps with the legibility of the typeface because it allows the readers to distinguish that H, say, from an uppercase uppercase I, which may be sitting next to it. However, I think it's important to note that a legible typeface can become unreadable through poor setting and placement, just as less legible typefaces can become more readable through good design. You can choose a brilliant typeface, but if you set it really badly, it's going to probably be worse than just leaving it in Arial. So, to conclude, typography aids and enhances the understanding of our data visualizations. It allows us to communicate lots of information in a very condensed form. It removes ambiguity and it reduces misinterpretation. It prevents things from being misinterpreted. We can annotate our data visualization with useful annotations that help the reader. And it aids clarity and precision. Good typography, I think, really does help us, in the words of Typography, to achieve graphical excellence, in which these complex ideas are communicated with clarity, proficiency, precision, and efficiency to the reader. So, thanks for listening, and if you've got any questions, feel free